where do you see them being most effective, and where did it lead for them?
So I think it's pretty effective for someone like Nina Otero Warren. But her families, both on her mother's side and her father's side, are really powerful political families in New Mexico. And, she becomes Alice Paul's point person in New Mexico, right? She is the head of the National Women's Party in New Mexico. So she's this Santa Fe socialite who is really close to powerful men, and is able to use those connections. She's in the capital city, with kind of the social networks that go along with that. And so she's quite politically able to use those positions to insist on a bilingual suffrage movement, right? Which is one of her big goals, and protect the Spanish language and kind of nurture it. Gertrude Bonnen is another person, and actually all the Native women are quite adept at understanding what white Americans, and to a certain extent African Americans, but white Americans in particular, think of when they think of Indians. And it's people in buckskin with braids and feathers and beads. And they're all willing at times to, wear dresses like that, or wear their hair in that particular way in order to get invited to give speeches. Bonnen calls her dress her calling card. She knows that this particular buckskin dress gets her in the door and on the stage. And once she's on the stage, she has the audience, right?
Yeah, and you told me actually, when we were talking about doing this program, you told me that she insisted on one booking that somebody else would have to carry the dress, right? Because it was too heavy to schlep on the train or whatever.
It's got this amazing just beaded front. I don't know if it's dentelia shells or something, I can't quite tell, but and yeah, so the letter I found from a little bit later, I think like late 20s, she writes to someone who clearly asked her to wear it. And she says, I've stopped wearing it because it's so heavy, and you have to basically have someone come pick it up for me on the train, or I'm not wearing it.
It's so interesting to contemplate that too, on the very day when Secretary of the Interior Deborah Haaland was sworn in wearing a absolutely divine ribbon dress, that, and with her entire family in attendance, similarly in regalia, and knowing that, yes, she also is a very savvy in her deployment of these images of herself as a fierce Native woman, because this gives her a kind of standing. I think she understands that that she can use it as she pursues the very broad political agenda that she has, as Secretary of Interior, now that she's not my Congresswoman anymore, which we feel very sad about, but happy to see her rise.
She's been amazing, and she does it a lot. She was wearing a similar skirt at the inauguration. She wore it for her swearing in as Congresswoman, right? So she does that really deliberately. And I think it's, it's a very similar motivation to these women from 100 years ago. And one thing that I know with Marie Baldwin, she really wanted to celebrate Native women's traditional sort of art forms. She actually is a huge collector herself of Native women's art. She wears things that highlight that, and she talks about that. And we have to remember, right, this is the moment, 19, early turn of the century, when the federal government is really trying to stamp that out, right? Assimilation policy, the Carlisle Indian School, these are all places where, traditional culture was being quashed. And so for these women to also, show up in this clothing, it's an assertion of the value of their culture, and particularly women's skills